All right, I am going to kick us off. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the January meeting of the BSA's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Network. I just want to let everybody know that with the exception of the discussion today, either in breakout sessions or if we wind up doing a whole group discussion, depending on the number of people that we have today at our meeting, today's meeting will be recorded and will be shared on the BSA's website as a resource. So again, so that we can encourage a free-flowing dialogue during those times, either in the breakout rooms or if we decide to do this, our discussion portion of today's session all together, we will not share any of those discussion pieces as well, just the presentation portion. So please, if you have any questions during the presentation, use the chat function and we'll be sure to answer any of those questions either during discussion or during the presentation. And we look forward to any questions or comments you have at the end of the presentation as well. So today's meeting content is the 6th in a series covering the topics of the AIA's Guides for Equitable Practice. And while each of these sessions are designed to stand alone as a topic, if you missed the first 5 sessions and are interested in learning more about any of those topics, you can find the recordings on the BSA's website on the EDI resources page. Oops, excuse me. So today, for the agenda of our meeting, we are going to be talking about a little bit about the resource guide for equity in practice that the BSA put out in the fall. We'll take a deep dive into mentorship and sponsorship. And then throughout that presentation, we'll have a few points during the presentation when we'll break out for some discussion. Then we'll all report back, talk about what we learned and what we're interested in talking about going further. And then we'll also have a few reminders about some upcoming topics and sessions that are related to the EDI committee's work that we'd love to make sure that people know about. So as I mentioned, this is the monthly meeting of the EDI network, which is a knowledge community of the BSA created to support conversation and awareness of issues related to equity, diversity, and inclusion within our profession. For our speakers today, you have myself, Rachel Zemberry, who's one of the co-chairs of the BSA EDI network and the vice president at Bergmeyer. You have Dan Riccadelli, who will wave and say hi, from CVT, who is also one of the co-chairs of the committee. You have Tony Ransom with the state, who is also one of the co-chairs and also very involved in NOMA. You have Julian Phillips, who is one of the contributors to the BSA's Equity in Practice Resource Guide and is an architect at Goody Clancy and also very involved in NOMA. So again, the content for what we're going to be speaking about today is going to be pulled from the AIA's Guides for Equitable Practice, which I encourage everybody to check out if you haven't already. Today's topic is on mentorship and sponsorship. So the BSA's Guide to Equity in Practice that I mentioned before, again, is another wonderful resource if you haven't had a chance to look at it as well. It's basically a Cliff Notes guide to the AIA's guide, which really pulls out a lot of the salient topics and how to put those into action within our profession. Additionally, the BSA's Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Network has a series of resources that we'd encourage you to check out, including an example firm policies for how to pull many of these topics into your own practice. I will also highlight that there are several mentorship programs that firms have generously shared with us as resources in terms of how they've structured mentoring programs within their own firms. So please do check those out through the EDI Network resources page on the BSA's website. And before I turn this over to Julian, who's going to be delivering our presentation today and helping to facilitate some of our discussion, I'll just reinforce the best practices that we all like to practice here at the EDI network. The most important being listen to be heard and not to be reinforced. Please make sure that we're all speaking with an open mind. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Julian.
Hi, Thanks, Rachel. That was great. So today we're going to talk about mentorship and sponsorship, and we're going to just go a little bit more in depth than the EDI best practices guide goes into. It's a really good document that was adapted from the AIA guide. We can go to the next slide, actually. But today I wanted to sort of just take a moment to define what a mentor is based on some research that I did. Um, and mentors are part of a personal development relationship that enables purposeful conversation to reflect on experiences and take informed decisions to and act upon ideas generated. There's an image on the right. I found these images from an NPR write up that sort of talked about mentorship and sponsorship, and we can kind of tell that the person that's like bestowing water or what it may be is sort of doing that, but the person that could be the mentee is in the boat, sort of directing the way. They're just kind of guiding, being a counselor or even an advisor to a professional person. Mentors really, once we think about it, they really do counsel, they do advise, and they do that for a professional person, but sometimes we can find mentors in our personal lives that help us become more professional. A mentor is someone who gives valuable career support and advice, and they, most importantly, I think they build self-esteem and is often considered as someone who is a role model. A lot of times the role models in our lives, we don't think of them as a direct mentor, but they do have influence on who we become. Next slide, please. So yeah, this chapter in the guide talks about mentors and sponsors, and we're gonna sort of use the nomenclature around mentors, but I'm gonna try my best to also include sponsors. But here I'm gonna also define the difference. Sponsors provide protection and support for a protege to take professional risk, and that's on behalf of their proteges. The sponsors are advocates for a person's career and not merely a mentor who is extra generous. Sponsors are senior leaders who, at the bare minimum, believe in their proteges and go out on a limb for them on behalf of advocating for their next promotion or providing air cover, as an article sort of talked about in NPR, for this protege to take risk. There's an image here again from the same artist, from the NPR write up, and there's a lot of fingers pointing in a lot of different ways. But as you can see, the sponsor sort of has the proteges back. They sort of propping them up in a way, and making sure that people see them, and also allowing them to go out on a limb on behalf of themselves. The next slide, please. A lot of the information that I found, and a lot of the information in the AIA guide was sort of a combination of a woman's work named Sylvia Ann Hewlett. She's an economist out of Cambridge, and I wanted to really talk about what she talks about, where she says mentors give, whereas sponsors invest. This is a cover, like an image from her book cover, and there's a whale here that's sort of guiding a sailboat. I thought it was a nice symbolic metaphor to what a mentor or a sponsor is, someone who is just understanding the road ahead and the path ahead and can see it from a different perspective or a different angle, but it's sort of always there and at a different scale. So the next slide, please. I like this slide the most, I think, because when I was doing a lot of research for this presentation, I sort of thought about the mentors in my life, but I also thought about the people that might have even mentored them. So there's a list here of mentors or sponsors and mentees or proteges, and they go back and forth basis like if they're a mentor or sponsor. But I'm going to just go through them quickly. A lot of people talk about Oprah, and Oprah is Oprah, but she accredits a lot of her work to Maya Angelou. A lot of the work that Maya Angelou has done, the insight that she gives on life, Oprah accredits most of her work and her life effort to Maya Angelou. Christian Dior and Yves Saint Laurent are two high fashion brands, and a lot of times they seem to be pitted against one another. But Yves Saint Laurent actually worked in the atelier under Christian Dior and always accredits a lot of things that happened in their careers to one another, but mostly just the pure adult, like just working in under Christian Dior was probably enough. We all know that Gandhi was not alive while Nelson Mandela was alive, but Nelson Mandela did most of his life's work in the not the shadow, but sort of under assumption of Gandhi as like this monk person who really just embodied goodness. A lot of the things that Nelson Mandela talked about came directly from Gandhi. And one more that's a little bit more fun, I think, is Professor Dumbledore and Harry Potter. A lot of us know this story, and in the beginning books, like Harry Potter was just this random kid walking around, but Professor Dumbledore sort of sponsored him, and even the battles that they had to fight. Professor Dumbledore was an advisor and a counselor, but most importantly, spoke on behalf of Harry Potter's like advance. He was like, no, this, I see something in this kid. Yes, he has his family lineage, but like I see something a little bit different. We should go for that, and like let him help out the school, which is Hogwarts Academy. I wrote Michelle Robinson here because that's her maiden name, but Michelle Obama, a lot of people really don't talk about this as much as I think Barack Obama does. Michelle was Barack Obama's mentor in a law firm, and a lot of the work, even him becoming president, was in the tribute to Michelle Obama's guidance in that law firm. Next slide, please. So we have a breakout group here, and in the breakout group, we're gonna so we've sort of been thinking about all these mentors and sort of thinking about the different experiences that mentors or sponsors give us. We wanna take 30 seconds to introduce ourselves: name, position, firm, and type of work. And then also, what is something that a mentor or sponsor has done for you? I think it'll be interesting for us to sort of reflect for a moment and think about this from a personal or professional standpoint. And we'll take a couple moments to do that.
So everyone, I'll be sorting you into breakout groups. So we'll do 3 breakout groups. And as Julian said, just about 3 minutes just to say hi. And then we're going to jump into these same groups. So once you're familiar, just 2 more times to talk about the rest of the presentation. So. Okay, so you should all get a link, and I'll give you a reminder when your 3 minutes is up. So for those of you still here, I sorted you into breakout rooms, but if you don't want to join, that's okay. Also,
I was on the phone and I told the person I would call them back.
Oh, that's okay. Well, this was just the quick intro one, so I'm going to call people back in 2 minutes. But you can still hit accept if you want to jump in.
Okay, so how do I? Where's my option to
you
do
see
that
a pop up on your Zoom menu there?
Okay. I don't see it.
Hey, Bill, we just jumped into breakout rooms, but we're coming back in 1 minute. So if you don't mind just waiting, the whole group will come back together. Bill, it's great to see your face. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I know. Am I in the right meeting? Is this the EDI meeting?
You are. We just broke into breakout groups, and everyone's coming back just now. I'm just closing the room, so it won't just
Thank
be
you.
me. And
Yeah, good to see you. I turned it on. Like I see your face. I'm like, Dan.
I know that's what you wanted, Phil.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
It's great to see you too.
Yeah, Rachel sent me the invite, and I just got back from the doctor's getting my yearly physical.
Oh, nice.
And I thought it was just a link to join, and I went to the BSA, and then I couldn't remember my password. You know how that goes.
Yeah, I getcha.
How are you?
Everyone's coming back. Julian Phillips is leading this presentation mostly. So.
All right. I'm like, there's only 2 people in this meeting.
Yeah, no, there's 20 something, I think.
All right.
Anyways, I'm forcing people out of their breakout rooms right now.
All right. I'm going to.
It's always nice to get thrown back into the to the mix.
That was too
You were
quick.
like mid-sentence.
I know.
We'll have several more opportunities. We'll actually have 2 more breakout rooms that are much longer than that. So
That's right. The next 2 should be about 10 minutes, but we'll kick it back to Julian so you can deliver the rest of the content in the presentation.
Yeah, so it was great to talk about the mentors in our life, but I really wanted to touch on why mentorship and sponsorship is even important, and look at it from the firm lens, in your own firms, and also in the more of a macro scale, like in the profession. I think that one thing in the firm that is really important is workplace culture. Workplace culture is something that I think a lot of firms might take for granted, especially in the virtual environment that we live in today. But once you have a sort of like a formal mentorship or sponsorship program, it sort of connects people across group lines, which is really important. Also, profitability and retention and recruitment. I think all those 3 kind of go in hand in hand, because if you have people looking out for one another, mentors and mentees, people will sort of retain, they will sort of stay, which is really important. Financial security also, a lot of times it's very difficult to not know if you have a job or what your next job is. But if you have like a mentor or a sponsor, someone that you know that you could at least ask if there's openings or ask if something's happening, it's really good to just be that person for someone too. Relationship building inside a firm is probably the most important thing, I think, right now, mostly also from a equity, diversity, and inclusion standpoint. A lot of times we don't think about as much how important going within or even outside of the group lines is really important to creating a highly skilled workforce. A lot of times that really will help us inside of our firm, but also inside of the profession. More of a macro scale thinking, the next generation of professionals is sort of out there already. Most of them are either in high school, college, or even emerging professionals. And mentorships and also sponsorships really just help to prime up the next generation and also learn industry skills. So most of the industry skills that we're learning today, I don't know about this room, but in the last 5 years, I know that the architecture profession has drastically changed from when I started school to where I am now in the profession. I'm like, wow, the programs aren't the same. Everything is very different. Everything's more intuitive. And that innovation is really important. And it also goes along with diversity. A lot of times we sort of look at the landscape of architecture and realize that it's predominantly the same. Most mentorship programs and sponsorship programs can sort of help diversify the profession at large and create an even highly skilled workforce. I added that one twice, but I know that we all know in architecture or in the AEC communities that consistency and is really effective. Anything that is consistent and effective is really helpful, and it could make for a streamlined success within our profession. So with the next slide. I talk about all these things, but I really wanted to hit some aspects of mentorship and sponsorship that kind of hit home for me. A lot of times when we think about finding a mentor or finding a mentee or finding a protege, we don't think about, like, we sort of like, oh, okay, that's my time, my effort, my energy, but it is mutually beneficial. Learning from a mentee, you can learn new technology developments, new industry developments, and also important features to give to the next generation. People encouraging, like I said before, within and across identity and cultural boundaries can lead to new perspectives. One thing that I was told a while back is that The best team is the one with the most perspectives. You get to expand everybody's mind and also potentially the client's mind, which is really important. Mentees also sort of are prompted 5 times more than those without a mentor, and mentors are prompted 6 times more often than those who do not mentor junior staff. With the next slide, please. And all of that, it's really important to think about the roles that we play as mentors or sponsors. This is a comic strip here, and there's a professor behind the desk, and in front of the desk there's a student, and the professor goes, "I have decided that I'm no longer interested in your research project. Unfortunately, you've jumped in at the tail end of my academic and finding interest in your topic. However, as much as it bores me, I will continue to pretend to care that you graduate." And the student's like, "What? Continue to pretend? Really?" And the professor leaves the screen now, and it's like, well, it's the least I can do. Most of the time when we think about being a mentor, we think about being a sponsor, we sort of don't realize that we do have a lot of roles. And those roles I've given a couple here. A mentor could be a teacher or a guide, a counselor, or even a motivator. Coach is a really large one because it sort of helps you advance to different things, but also walks you through that process. An advisor and a referral agent, a lot of times, especially in the pandemic that we're living in, being a referral agent is probably more valuable than a door opener. And also, like we said before, being a role model is really important. Next slide, please. But with all those roles, it's really important to realize that you don't actually become them, you just have active listening and observation skills. So the active listening and observations will help a mentor or a sponsor become um, any of those roles. Being fully present is really important. Learning to listen to what is implied. I think that I'm a little bit thankful for the virtual environment in these times, especially in the conversations that I have with the mentors in my life. It's a more of an intimate approach. We're sort of sitting face to face, whether we intended to or not, even if it's virtual. Observing the whole person, realizing that a lot of people do have personal lives, and sometimes when something is implied, it might not be only in the office. One of the best mentors that I've had has sort of learned to observe themselves in the relationship with me. So observing yourself in relationship with a mentee is really important, or a protege. Just sort of identifying the commonalities. It's really important to just be like, hey, I've been through this. This is my perception of what's happening. This is what I did to get out of the same situation or to get in the same situation. And one more thing that's also really important and really becoming a lot easier, I think, in coronavirus, in the pandemic, is observing one's breath, their emotions, their thoughts, and their perceptions. Just take a moment, even when you talk to them, to just understand who they are as a human being, but also who they are as a living being. Next slide, please. This is probably one of my favorite slides because I really am into metaphors and concepts and things like that. And I started to think about this whole thing and sort of realized that I was leading people into a space, but I didn't want to, and sort of wanted to end it on a metaphor. So the best thing about a spaceship is that it does go in the sky, but before that, it does have to be primed and prepped. It can't go anywhere unless people believe in it, first off. And I'm sure when Elon Musk and SpaceX or NASA figure out something, before they do that, they have to think about the infrastructure. We want to start the mentoring process with an attitude of building trust. Setting up mentoring contracts in the initial meetings are really important, to just setting a ground to what you both intend to get out of the experience. But even during this spaceship process, people are looking at the spaceship and they're like, wow, if this doesn't go into the sky, we're gonna blow up. Everybody's gonna blow up. Like, it's not gonna be great, you know? Even Elon Musk had to be like, you know, there's not a lot of backing from NASA, but I believe in myself. And during the mentoring process, you have to have a positive attitude of encouragement. You want to give directions as it's required. And the most important part is liftoff. When the mentoring sessions are close to an end, the mentors should have an attitude of reducing dependency of a mentee. You really don't want the mentee to be dependent on you. You want them to be self-dependent. I think the next slide is actually another breakout group. Yeah. So you want to go for that, Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Julian. So we'll be using the same breakout rooms that we established last time, so you don't have to reintroduce yourself. And we have a couple prompts here. So what mentorship program or approach would be best for your firm? And who are the target groups for mentors and mentees? And does your firm have a robust mentorship and sponsorship culture? Do your senior leaders support mentoring and engage in sponsoring? And I will put these prompts in the chat as well, so you don't have to remember them while you're speaking with your group. So we'll have about 8 minutes for this breakout group, and I will boot you all into them right now. Hi, for those just joining, I just want to let you know we're in breakout rooms right now, but everyone will be rejoining the larger group in about 2 minutes. So if you just want to hold tight, we'll come back to the larger group presentation. We'll just go ahead and give everyone a minute to rejoin the larger group.
We were so concise that it was just like, wow, we actually.
Yep. We got cut off mid-sentence the last time, so we learned our lesson.
I feel very ruthless pressing the button every time, but
Yeah.
Someone asked you.
All right. The other 2 rooms are still getting booted out, so let's give it one more minute.
Such a mean guy, Dan.
I know, Bill. Okay, everyone, welcome back. I know that was a quick breakout room, but I'm going to hand it back to Julian.
All right. So one of my favorite quotes by Toni Morrison, it goes sort of like, let's see. I don't know why I couldn't think of it first. When entering into positions of power, remember to dream a little bit before you think. And we've dreamt a lot in the beginning of this presentation of just like sort of visionary, like what could we be, what could we do? And in thinking, I'm sort of learning that when it comes to thinking, you have to learn about the pitfalls and the disadvantages because that's the reality, you know. And I'm going to talk a bit about the pitfalls of mentorships. Over dependence of a mentee is probably not a best practice. Also, mentee exploitation of the mentor's influence. You don't really want someone to use your power for their own influence. And then also not knowing the difference between developing a mentee and using a mentee. I know it's really easy when there's a lot on our plates and just understanding, oh, someone else could do this. Maybe they even want to enjoy doing that. But we just have to know the difference between it. Lydia.com wrote an article about avoiding mentoring pitfalls, and it goes, now in a world where people in positions of power and authority have traditionally looked quite male and quite pale, this can pose a serious problem for many of us who are looking to advance our careers and for any organization that wants to cultivate a culture of diversity and inclusion. The first step here is to admit that we all carry this kind of unconscious bias. That's why we must all consciously work. A lot of the things in the previous presentation, we're talking about just being a conscious worker. Those roles, even like active listening, those kind of skills are just conscious work. And we want to just make sure that we are clear and direct with our intentions when it comes to mentorship and also sponsorship. Next slide, please, Dan. And one of one of my favorite things to talk about in these spaces are the equity in it all. I think that it's really important in the world that we live in today, and also the profession that we've sort of all gotten ourselves into, to recognize that the support of interculturally competent mentors and sponsors from majority groups is crucial for advancing diversity among underrepresented groups. While it's challenging to have a formal mentorship program, it was noted by the AIA's Diversity in Profession and Architecture Survey as one of the top factors in retaining people of color in firms. We sort of have to recognize that a lot of times the way that we got to somewhere isn't always the way that the other person has gotten to somewhere, and the way that we feel in a space isn't always the way that other people feel in a space. So sort of just looking to someone that's across a group line or even in an underrepresented group could be important to that person feeling comfortable or having the wherewithal to show up. And since the architecture profession has so many small offices, it can also be helpful for architects to look beyond the boundaries of any one office when seeking a mentor or a sponsorship match. Boston in particular, we have a large AEC community, I think one of the largest in the country. It just kind of goes unnoticed. And in that comes a lot of really small but really well endowed firms. It would be helpful to join BSA groups, join Bosnoma even, sort of get out into professional and also social environments to find people that you have likeness with, even if they're across group lines. There's another quote here that says, "At the heart of mentoring for racial equity is building relationships that encourage self-advocacy. This approach helps individuals overcome inequitable circumstances, affirms multifaceted identities, and fosters a relationship where the mentor and the mentee teach and learn from one another." If you all did not learn anything from today's presentation, please carry with you the mutual beneficial slide. I think that a lot of the mentors that I have, even from high school, some of the teachers that I still talk to, we are mutually beneficial to one another, and we learn and we teach one another all the time. I think that the most of the equity in mentorship and sponsorship goes in wanting to learn, but the most important part of this quote is encouraging self-advocacies, just making sure that people have a space to take up space. Thanks so much for the time today. We have one more great breakout group, but that's the end of my presentation.
Yeah,
And
so we'll do, thank you, Julian. We'll do one last breakout group, and it will be about the same amount of time as the last one, about 8 minutes. And then we're just gonna come back together as a big group, and we'll have the opportunity to share anything that we learned in our breakout groups. And then Tony will wrap it up with upcoming events and also some mentorship programs that we recommend. So I'll put you all in groups now, and I again will put the the questions in the chat.
No, I was the mid-sentence person. Oh,
That
well.
was excellent, Sarah. That was good.
Welcome back, everyone. Sorry to pull the plug on the breakout rooms. We just have a couple minutes left together today. So I just wanted to open the conversation now that all the groups are back together to see if anybody wanted to share thoughts that came up in the breakout rooms. And really what we're after is, are there positive examples of mentorships or mentorship styles that you'd like to share with the group, a group of your peers? And second, you know, are there ways that we can make the mentorship and sponsorship process more equitable? And what will we need to do in order to enact that change? So no need to raise your hand, just go ahead and unmute if you'd like to bring your thoughts from your breakout room to the larger group.
Just unmute yourself.
Otherwise, you're on the hook, Tony.
So this is Caroline Fitzgerald. So Janelle Dunhill and I worked on a mid-career mentoring program through the BSA. And one of the lessons learned after the first year is that Janelle and her committee primarily created a very detailed questionnaire that the mentee had to complete first. And what it did, it specifically identified, you know, of course, their discipline, their specialty, where they were in their career, and what they were kind of struggling with at the moment. So were they bumping into a ceiling at their current firm? Were they looking to change careers, for example, from going from a design role to a construction or OPM or owner's role? And through detailed questions like that, we were able to make much more successful matches. So I think setting up a program, you know, as you said, how do you make it more successful, you know, and to do that, I think that was one thing to do, is to sort of set up the expectation and what the need was, and that made for really successful relationships, more or less.
I think that's really valuable advice. So not just polling on where you are in your career, but also where you'd like to go.
Right.
That's fantastic. Would anybody else like to share their thoughts?
This is Kelsey from Schwartz Silver Architects. One of the things that we discussed in our group was kind of the importance of having compatible or similar personalities for mentors and mentees, and that how sometimes with a more formally structured program, if people are kind of paired up by some third-party source, it doesn't always work as well as when people kind of can have a more organic connection from within the office, kind of off on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to both your and Caroline's point, mismatching mentors is a sure way to make a program fail. So it's, I think, really a great point that maybe a third-party matching system is not always the way to go, unless it's informed by data or preferences or other things like that. Okay, would anybody else like to share their group conversations before we move on, and Tony will wrap us up? Okay, well, Tony, it's off to you.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I have a few comments or questions for you to think about. Based on your comments within the breakout group you were in, do you feel that there's an unfulfilled need for mentoring your staff? Of course, this is primarily for the firm owners and firm executives. And if so, how soon will you be able to address it? For individuals and staff members, do you feel your company values developing staff through an internal mentoring program? Or would you feel more comfortable being mentored by someone outside of your firm? Just some food for thought, for people moving forward. By the way, there are some other BSA mentoring programs. Women in Design had a mid-career mentorship program. I would suggest you go to the BSA website, look them up. and find out what they have coming up in the future if you were interested in that total program. Boss Noma has got together with the Architecture, Construction, and Engineering Mentorship Program, which is basically for high school students, to help engage them to move forward into possible careers in the construction industry. If anyone's interested, Boss Noma is open to everyone. Please join us, and maybe in our third session with ACE, maybe you can be a participant. Excuse me, moving on, the Race and Architecture series, February the 9th is having a revisioning, I'll say, workshop. You know, in 2020, we were like a lot of opening listening sessions to figure out where the profession was at and where they thought the gaps were. But for 2021, on this date, we're going to have a brainstorming session so that maybe we can find directions and avenues in which to act upon the ideas and the gaps that maybe people thought were in the profession that we found out about in 2020. So we hope you will engage with that and give us your thoughts on how we best can move forward to help the profession, the community, and also in education in these areas. Boss Noma will be having its next monthly meeting on February the 23rd. Please, you can contact us to get the Zoom link or go to the events calendar, the BSA, and register so you can get that link and join us for our next meeting. Also, the EDI network has established a book club. They will meet the first working Friday of every month. So the next meeting is going to be on February the 5th. I hope that date's correct. Yes, February the 5th. Please join us. Find out the kind of things we may be reading, or bring us suggestions on any book you think would be appropriate for us to look at. And last but not least, the architectural registration exam. If you know anyone who might be interested in joining the BSA success team, there's a kickoff meeting on February the 10th for all those interested in getting support and help in being able to pass the ARAE. Any intern associate architect you have in your firm that you know of, please advise them of this so that they can get some help and some camaraderie, as we used to do in approaching passing this exam. Also, our next EDI Network monthly series will be on advancing your career, which will be on February the 17th. Please let others know about this, and hopefully we'll see you again, and we can look at ways that we can work with one another to move forward in the profession. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And I also just want to thank Julian for such a wonderful guest presentation. We really, really appreciate you putting together those slides and all of that content. It was really informative.
Yes.
Thanks
Thank you
for
very
listening,
much, Julia.
Thank you all.
Great.
That was
Thank
really
you.
good.
Boss
We'll see you
Noma
in
proud.
February.